Imagine for a moment that someone you love deeply approaches you and says, "I want you to feel pain." Your first reaction would probably be shock, perhaps even betrayal. After all, don't we expect love to protect us from suffering? But what if? I told you that through Friedrich Nietzsche's philosophy, we can understand this apparently cruel desire as the deepest act of love. To comprehend this radical perspective, we must first understand how Nietzsche viewed suffering. In our contemporary society, we do everything to avoid pain. We have apps to distract us, medications for any discomfort, an entire industry dedicated to keeping us in our comfort zone. But Nietzsche challenges us with a completely different vision. In Thus Spoke Zarathustra, Nietzsche writes, "What does not kill me makes me stronger." But this phrase, so often quoted and often misunderstood, goes far beyond simple encouragement to be strong. For Nietzsche, suffering is not merely something to be endured, but a pedagogically transformative force. Think with me through an analogy. A sculptor facing a block of marble doesn't see just raw stone. He sees the hidden form within it. Each chisel strike, each fragment removed, is an act of necessary violence to reveal the true work of art. The marble suffers to become sculpture. Similarly, Nietzsche suggests that we need to go through painful processes to reveal our true self. But how does this apply to love? This is where things get really interesting. In our traditional romantic view, love is refuge, safe harbor, protection against life's storms. We expect our partners to console us, support us, keep us comfortable. Nietzsche would say that this type of love, although comforting, can be profoundly limiting. In Beyond Good and Evil, Nietzsche writes about what he calls herd morality, the human tendency to seek security in conformity, in the known, in the comfortable. Love that only protects and comforts can inadvertently keep us trapped in this herd morality. It can prevent us from growing, from transforming, from becoming who we really are. This is where the concept of the pedagogy of suffering in love enters. When someone who truly loves us desires that we feel pain, they are not acting out of cruelty or sadism. They are recognizing that certain truths about ourselves can only be revealed through confrontation with our limits, through questioning our comfortable certainties. Let's analyze this at 3 distinct levels of transformation. The first is the level of consciousness. When we're comfortable, we rarely question our choices, our values, our life direction. It's like being in a room with perfect temperature. You don't even notice the air conditioning running. But when the temperature changes drastically, you suddenly become hyperconscious of the environment. Discomfort forces us to awaken. Nietzsche had a powerful phrase, "Become who you are." But how can we become who we are if we don't even know who we are beneath all the layers of social expectations, inherited beliefs, and borrowed identities? Suffering acts as an existential solvent, dissolving these false layers. The second level is that of will. Nietzsche developed the concept of will to power, not as desire for power over others, but as life's fundamental impulse toward growth and self-overcoming. When we face pain and choose to continue, when we say yes to life despite suffering, we are exercising this will to power. Imagine a relationship where your partner never challenges you, never questions your decisions, always agrees with everything you do. Superficially, it seems ideal. But Nietzsche would argue that this type of relationship atrophies your will. It's like muscles that are never exercised. Eventually, they wither. The third level is that of transformation itself. And here Nietzsche presents us with a radical idea. It's not enough to overcome suffering. We must learn to love it as an integral part of existence. In The Gay Science, he introduces the concept of amor fati, love of fate. This doesn't mean passive resignation, but an active affirmation of all aspects of life, including the painful ones. When we apply this to relationships, we see that a partner who desires our transformative suffering is, paradoxically, demonstrating the highest respect for our potential. They are saying, I refuse to love a diminished version of you. I see who you can become, and I'm willing to be the catalyst for this transformation, even if it means being temporarily seen as cruel. It's crucial to distinguish this from abuse or sadism. The difference lies in intention and result. Abuse seeks control and diminishment of the other. Sadism finds pleasure in others' suffering. The pedagogy of suffering we're discussing seeks liberation and growth. It's like the difference between a surgeon who cuts to heal and someone who cuts to harm. Nietzsche uses the metaphor of the abyss powerfully. He writes, "When you gaze long into an abyss, the abyss also gazes into you." In the context of love, this means that when we're forced to confront our own depths, our fears, weaknesses, contradictions, we are inevitably transformed by this encounter. A relationship that practices this pedagogy of suffering operates very differently from conventional romances. There are no promises of constant happiness or perpetual harmony. Instead, there's a commitment to truth, to growth, to authenticity, even when these values conflict with comfort. Think of a practical example. Imagine you have a fear of professional failure and therefore stay in a secure but unsatisfying job. A conventional partner might console you, saying it's okay, that security is important. But a partner who understands the pedagogy of suffering might deliberately create situations that force you to confront this fear, perhaps questioning your excuses, exposing your rationalizations, refusing to be complicit in your stagnation. Is this painful? Absolutely. Is it love? According to Nietzsche, it's the highest form of love because it refuses complicity with our self-imposed mediocrity. In The Birth of Tragedy, Nietzsche distinguishes between the Apollonian and Dionysian impulses. Apollo represents order, reason, form. Dionysus represents chaos, passion, dissolution of boundaries. The pedagogy of suffering in love is fundamentally Dionysian. It seeks to break established forms to allow new configurations to emerge. It's important to note that this philosophy doesn't glorify suffering for its own sake. Nietzsche wasn't a masochist. He distinguished between necessary and unnecessary suffering, between pain that transforms and pain that merely destroys. Wisdom lies in recognizing the difference. In the context of love, this means that the partner who desires our transformative suffering must possess profound wisdom and compassion. They must know when to push and when to support, when to challenge and when to comfort. It's like a Zen master who knows exactly when and how to apply the blow that will awaken the disciple. This approach also requires tremendous courage from both parties, from the partner who inflicts pedagogical pain because they risk being misunderstood, being seen as cruel, and from the one who receives it because they must trust that there's love behind the challenge, purpose behind the pain. Nietzsche constantly reminds us that life is will to power, the impulse to grow, expand, overcome. Love that keeps us static, however comfortable it may be, is ultimately a betrayal of this vital impulse. That's why he viewed excessive compassion, easy consolation, weakening protection with suspicion. In his words, what is done out of love always takes place beyond good and evil. This doesn't mean that love justifies any cruelty, but that true love sometimes requires actions that seem cruel on the surface, but are deeply compassionate in essence. The pedagogy of suffering in love also implies a particular view of time and transformation. It's not about inflicting pain constantly, but about recognizing crucial moments where discomfort can catalyze necessary changes. It's a temporal art, knowing when the beloved is ready for the next level of growth. This leads us to a deep reflection on the nature of modern relationships. How many of us remain in relationships that keep us comfortably asleep? How many partners, in the name of love, excessively protect us from difficult truths about ourselves, and how many of us do the same with those we love? Nietzsche would say that this type of love is actually a subtle form of contempt. By protecting someone from all suffering, we're implicitly saying we don't believe in their capacity to grow through adversity. It's like keeping a plant in a perfect greenhouse. It may survive, but it will never develop the resistance necessary to flourish in the real world. Nietzsche's concept of the Overman or Superman, Übermensch, is relevant here. It's not about a being superior in terms of power, but someone who has overcome their own limitations, who has become who they truly are. The pedagogy of suffering in love aims precisely at this, helping the other become their own overman. It's fascinating how Nietzsche anticipates many modern psychological discoveries about post-traumatic growth. Today, we know scientifically that certain forms of adversity, when properly processed, can lead to higher levels of psychological functioning. Nietzsche intuited this philosophically over a century ago. But there's a final paradox that needs to be addressed. If we accept that suffering can be pedagogically valuable in love, how do we distinguish this from genuinely toxic or abusive relationships? The answer lies in reciprocity and purpose. In the Nietzschean pedagogy of suffering, both partners are committed to mutual growth. It's not a unidirectional dynamic where one inflicts pain and the other merely receives. It's a dialectical process where both challenge each other, both grow, both transform. Furthermore, the purpose is always expansion, never diminishment. An abusive relationship seeks to make the other smaller, more dependent, weaker. The pedagogy of suffering seeks exactly the opposite, to make the other stronger, freer, more authentic. Nietzsche wrote, "One must still have chaos in oneself to be able to give birth to a dancing star." Love that practices the pedagogy of suffering recognizes this necessary chaos and, instead of trying to eliminate it, helps transform it into creation. This leads us to a provocative conclusion. Perhaps the most loving relationships aren't the most comfortable ones, but those that challenge us to become who we truly are. Perhaps the greatest gift we can give someone isn't protection from all pain, but the courage to face the necessary pains for growth. As Nietzsche reminds us in Ecce Homo, "My formula for human greatness is amor fati, not to want anything different, not forwards, not backwards, not in all eternity, not merely to endure what is necessary, still less to conceal it, but to love it." When we apply this to relationships, we see that truly loving someone might mean loving them enough not to spare them from experiences that will make them more complete. It's a courageous, difficult, transformative love, exactly as Nietzsche believed life should be lived. The pedagogy of suffering in love isn't for everyone. It requires maturity, courage, and a deep understanding of both oneself and the other. But for those willing to embark on this journey, it offers the possibility of a love that not only comforts but transforms, that not only protects but liberates, that not only accepts but elevates. In the end, the question Nietzsche leaves us with is this: do we prefer a love that keeps us safe but small, or a love that makes us vulnerable but grand? The choice, as always in Nietzsche, is deeply personal and definitely transformative. The paradox of Dionysian love. Between destruction and creation, to truly understand what Dionysian love means, we must begin with one of the most fundamental distinctions in Friedrich Nietzsche's thought, the dichotomy between Apollo and Dionysus. This duality, first presented in The Birth of Tragedy, is not merely an analysis of ancient Greek art, but a profound meditation on opposing forces that shape all human experience, including love. Apollo, the god of light and form, represents order, clarity, individuality, and reason. It's the principle that creates boundaries, establishes defined forms, keeps things in their proper places. In the context of love, The Apollonian principle manifests as love that seeks harmony, stability, predictability. It's the love of traditional marriage vows, shared routines, happily ever after. It's beautiful, comforting, safe. Dionysus, on the other hand, is the god of wine, ecstasy, dissolution. He represents creative chaos, the breaking of boundaries, the intoxication that dissolves the individual ego into something greater. It's the force that destroys established forms to allow new configurations to emerge. In love, the Dionysian principle manifests as overwhelming passion, transformation through chaos, creative destruction of established identities. It's crucial to understand that Nietzsche didn't see these principles as mutually exclusive or in competition. For him, the greatest art, and we can extend this to the greatest loves, arises from the creative tension between these forces. But what happens when a love becomes predominantly Dionysian? This is where we find our fascinating paradox, Dionysian. Love is described in the synopsis as vertiginous, destroyer of illusions. Let's explore deeply what this means and why it's paradoxical. Vertigo is an experience of disorientation, of loss of stable references. Imagine being at the top of a skyscraper and looking down, that sensation that the ground disappears, that your certainties about up and down momentarily dissolve. This is exactly what Dionysian love provokes in the existential realm. When we experience this type of love, all our comfortable certainties about who we are, what we want, where we're going, are called into question. It's as if the existential ground disappears from under our feet. The identities we've carefully constructed over the years, successful professional, stable partner, rational person, all begin to seem like masks we can remove. This vertigo is simultaneously terrifying and liberating. Terrifying because we lose our habitual anchors, liberating because we discover we can exist without them. Nietzsche would say that this vertiginous experience is essential for authenticity, for only when we lose our false securities can we discover who we really are beyond social conventions. The destroyer of illusions aspect of Dionysian love operates like Nietzsche's philosophical hammer, the one he uses to philosophize with a hammer, breaking idols and false beliefs. In the context of love, these illusions might include the idea that we know exactly who we are, that love should always be comfortable, that stability is the ultimate goal of a relationship. The central paradox emerges here. How can something that destroys be simultaneously creative? How can love, which we associate with construction and union, be valuable when it becomes destructive? The answer lies in the specific nature of this destruction. Dionysian love doesn't destroy for the sake of destroying, but destroys the false, to create space for the authentic. Think of an analogy with nature. A forest fire seems purely destructive, but ecologists know that many ecosystems depend on periodic fire for renewal. Certain seeds only germinate after exposure to extreme heat. Accumulated organic matter is cleared, allowing new life to flourish with renewed vigor. Dionysian love operates similarly in the ecosystem of the human psyche. When this love destroys illusions, it's actually performing a necessary cleansing, false beliefs about ourselves, borrowed identities, unexamined social roles. All this is fuel for the Dionysian fire. And what remains after this burning? Ideally, a more authentic and vital version of ourselves. But here, another aspect of the paradox arises. This creative destruction requires tremendous trust. In a traditional Apollonian relationship, trust is built through predictability and stability. In Dionysian love, trust must exist despite, or perhaps because of, unpredictability. It's trusting that your partner isn't destroying you, but the false versions of you. Nietzsche introduces another crucial concept here, the will to power. In Dionysian love, both partners exercise their will to power not as domination over each other, but as mutual creative force. It's an encounter of forces that challenge and elevate each other mutually. The destruction each provokes in the other is, paradoxically, an act of creation of space for growth, for authenticity, for transformation. The paradox deepens when we consider that Dionysian love simultaneously demands fusion and separation. On one hand, there are moments of complete ego dissolution, where the boundaries between self and other dissolve in the intoxication of passion. On the other, there's a profound respect for the irreducible otherness of the other. It's as if Dionysian's love says, "I dissolve into you momentarily to better appreciate your singularity when I return to myself." This dynamic creates a constant dance between proximity and distance, between fusion and individuation. It's not the permanent fusion of traditional romantic love, nor the cold distancing of purely rational relationships. It's something more complex, more dynamic, more alive. Nietzsche's concept of eternal recurrence also illuminates our paradox. If we had to live each moment infinite times, would we choose to live this chaotic and transformative love? Dionysian love answers with a resounding yes. It embraces both moments of ecstasy and destruction as inseparable parts of a greater whole. Let's consider how this manifests practically. Imagine a couple where one partner has had a stable and predictable career for decades. Apollonian love would support this stability, perhaps celebrate the security it provides. Dionysian love, however, might question, is this career really your passion, or is it a golden cage? It might create situations that force the partner to confront this question, even if it means risking financial stability. Is it destructive? Certainly. Is it loving? In the Nietzschean paradigm, deeply so, because it refuses to be complicit in an unexamined life, in an inauthentic existence. The paradox is that this apparent cruelty can be the greatest kindness, the refusal to let someone we love waste their only life in false securities. Dionysian love also paradoxically combines intensity with impermanence. It doesn't promise eternal duration, but present intensity. It's the love that says, I don't know if we'll be together forever, but in this moment, let's live as if we were gods. This acceptance of impermanence, paradoxically, can make each moment more precious, more intense, more authentic. Nietzsche wrote about the pessimism of strength, the capacity to face the most difficult aspects of existence, not with despair, but with joyful affirmation. Dionysian love embodies this pessimism of strength. It recognizes that relationships can end, that people change, that nothing is guaranteed, and yet plunges completely into the experience. Another paradoxical aspect is that Dionysian love is simultaneously beyond good and evil, as Nietzsche would say, and deeply ethical. It doesn't follow conventional morality that values stability and comfort above all, but it follows a deeper ethics, the ethics of authenticity, courage, transformation. It's amoral in the conventional sense, but deeply moral in its commitment to truth and growth. The paradox also manifests in the relationship between chaos and purpose. Dionysian love brings chaos, but not senseless chaos. It's the primordial chaos of creation myths, that which contains within itself all possibilities. Each act of destruction serves a greater purpose of revelation and transformation. It's chaos with direction, destruction with creative intention. Consider the metaphor of wine so dear to Dionysus. Wine requires the destruction of grapes. They must be crushed, their original form completely destroyed. The fermentation process is essentially controlled decomposition, yet the result is something many consider more valuable than the original. Grapes, Dionysian love operates similarly. It destroys original forms to create something potentially more refined, more potent. The paradox extends to the question of consciousness. Dionysian love seeks moments of rational consciousness dissolution, of ecstatic intoxication. But paradoxically, these moments of unconsciousness can lead to deeper levels of consciousness. It's as if we need to lose ourselves periodically to find ourselves more authentically. Nietzsche spoke about the need to become who one is. Dionysian love facilitates this process through its paradoxical nature. By destroying who we think we are, it creates space for who we really are to emerge. By disorienting us, it reorients us toward authenticity. By intoxicating us, it sobers us from our illusions. The paradox also appears in the relationship between suffering and joy. Dionysian love doesn't promise constant happiness. In fact, it guarantees moments of profound discomfort, disorientation, loss. But Nietzsche teaches us about tragic joy, the capacity to affirm life completely, including its most difficult aspects. Dionysian love embodies this tragic joy. It's important to distinguish Dionysian love from mere hedonism or pleasure-seeking. Hedonism avoids pain. Dionysian love embraces it as an inseparable part of the intensity of experience. Hedonism seeks comfort. Dionysian love seeks authenticity, even when uncomfortable. The paradox is that by accepting suffering as part of love, we can experience deeper joys. The temporality of Dionysian love is also paradoxical. It exists intensely in the present. But this present intensity creates memories that reverberate into the future. It doesn't promise permanence, but its transformative effects can be permanent. It's ephemeral in form, but eternal in impact. The final paradox may be the deepest. Dionysian love is simultaneously the most personal and the most impersonal of loves. It's intensely personal because it demands authentic encounter between two singularities. But it's impersonal because it serves forces greater than individuals, the forces of life, transformation, will to power. When the synopsis speaks of the wife who wants you to feel pain, she is embodying this Dionysian paradox. She is simultaneously destroyer and creator, cruel and loving, chaotic and purposeful. She represents the Dionysian force that refuses the comfort of mediocrity in favor of the intensity of transformation. Living a Dionysian love requires what Nietzsche called a free spirit, someone capable of dancing over abysses, of creating their own values, of affirming life in its tragic totality. It's not for everyone. It requires courage, resilience, and a deep capacity to trust the process of transformation, even when painful. The paradox of Dionysian love confronts us with fundamental questions. Do we prefer the security of form or the vitality of becoming? Do we choose the comfort of predictability or the intensity of transformation? Do we value preservation or renewal more? There are no right answers to these questions. Nietzsche himself recognized that different natures require different paths. But for those called to the Dionysian path, the paradoxes are not obstacles to be resolved, but creative tensions to be danced. In the end, the paradox of Dionysian love can be summarized thus. It's a love that destroys through excess of life. Not lack of it. It's a love that breaks molds because it overflows, not because it's empty. It's a love that causes vertigo because it elevates, not because it knocks down. As Nietzsche reminds us, the highest life is not one that avoids contradictions, but one that embraces them creatively. Dionysian love, in all its paradoxical nature, offers exactly this, a way of loving that is simultaneously destruction and creation, chaos and purpose, suffering and ecstasy. If we're those brave enough to experience it, it promises not comfort or security, but something perhaps more valuable. The possibility of a life lived at its maximum intensity, a love that transforms as much as it connects, an experience that justifies all its paradoxes through the depth of its authenticity. It is, as Nietzsche would say, love beyond good and evil, not because it ignores ethics, but because it serves a deeper ethics, the ethics of life in its fullest and most authentic expression. And perhaps it's exactly because of its paradoxes, not despite them, that Dionysian love offers one of the most transformative experiences available to the human condition. Through this exploration of Nietzschean philosophy applied to love, we discover that suffering and destruction can paradoxically be the greatest gifts we offer to those we love. Love that only comforts can keep us prisoners of diminished versions of ourselves, while love that challenges, even through pain, liberates us to become who we truly are. Between the poles of Apollo and Dionysus, between order and chaos, between preservation and transformation, we find a type of love that transcends conventional moral categories. It's not a love for everyone, certainly, but for those willing to embrace its paradoxes, it offers something invaluable: the possibility of a life and love lived at their maximum authenticity and intensity. As Nietzsche teaches us, what is done out of love is always beyond good and evil, not because it ignores ethics, but because it serves something deeper. The courageous affirmation of life in all its tragic and glorious complexity. In the end, perhaps the greatest act of love is to refuse to let someone waste their only existence in false securities, even if that means being temporarily seen as cruel. This is the provocative legacy Nietzsche leaves us, to question whether we prefer a love that keeps us safe but small, or a love that makes us vulnerable but grand.